Hello, very good evening to you. Welcome to Calendar.
Hello, these are tonight's main stories.
The cost of simply surviving. Housebound and dependent on machines to keep them alive, people like Stephen say energy costs are pushing them to the brink.
I'm not on a benefits ground, I just want... This is not my fault being at home all the time, but I feel like I'm punished for it.
A murder investigation is underway in Leeds after a man was found critically injured in the street.
Police have been given extra stop and search powers in the hunt for dangerous and offensive weapons following this murder and a string of violent incidents.
I have never, ever been on anything like this. Look, we're going to take over the streets of London, aren't we?
Memories of the march. 20 years on, we speak to those who travelled from Yorkshire to the capital to protest about the Iraq War.
And from the oldest to the youngest swinger in town, the Bradford golfing partners with more than 80 years between them. Thanks for joining us. A disabled man from Huddersfield who needs electrical equipment just to stay alive says rising energy costs have put him on the brink. Stephen Walker is housebound for most of the time and says he feels like he's being punished just for being ill. The government says it's put measures in place to help people like him, but charities say Stephen is just one of a growing army of people facing similar hardships. Katie Oscroft has our main story.
Stephen Walker has chronic pain and can't eat normally, so he spends all day attached to a machine which gets nutrition into his body.
That's all my TPM.
All this means he's mainly housebound.
I need to have my pump charged all the time. I have a big massive TPM fridge in the kitchen that's the size of a fridge freezer. That it's got to be at a certain temperature all the time, so it's constantly running and changing and doing stuff. And then I'm at home all the time, and there's only so many hours a day that you can go without turning a TV on. Since the bills have gone up in the last 12 to 18 months, it's hard, it's difficult now. I'm at the point where I'm at the end of my limits now. There's nowhere else I can go, so it's scary.
Stephen used to be fit, employed and active and has no complaints about the benefits he's now given to live on.
The ground floor one next door came
But the cost of his energy bills, which have risen from £120 a month to somewhere between £300 and £400, mean he fears he can't cope with another increase.
And do you know of other people in your situation?
Yeah, loads. I've got friends all over the country that are in similar situations to me, housebound, have medical devices, and they're all struggling as well because their energy usage is high.
The Department for Work and Pensions said in a statement, the government is committed to protecting the most vulnerable, and we know those living with disabilities and long-term illnesses face extra costs. We're also increasing benefits in line with inflation at 10.1% from April.
Being diagnosed with Crohn's and colitis can have a major impact on your education and your work, which in turn makes you very vulnerable when it comes to a cost of living crisis.
Stephen's girlfriend and close family help him as much as they can, but he says worrying about paying the bills doesn't help his already poor health.
Something like a certain tariff or something for people that are at home, bedbound. I don't want any more benefits or nothing like that. I'm not on a benefits ground, I just want... This is not my fault being at home all the time, but I feel like I'm punished for it because I'm paying the most.
Stephen says for him and others like him, the cost of energy is the price of staying alive. Katie Oscroft, ITV News, Huddersfield.
Tom Marsland is from the charity Scope that's been advising disabled people worried about the rising cost of living. Earlier I asked him if Stephen's case was just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. At Scope, we have a dedicated energy support service helpline, and we've seen calls to the helpline increase by 670% compared to the similar time last year. which just shows you just how many disabled people are struggling with their energy bills. We know it's a crisis disabled people are facing.
And of course, it's not just a choice, is it, between heating and eating? It's other things. People need their fridges on to keep sort of medicine in and things like that. That's a real issue for people.
Exactly. We're hearing from people who, need to keep medicines in the fridge, but also people who, need to keep their homes at a certain temperature because of their disability or impairment, and lots and lots of issues like that. People skipping meals, people only having one hot drink a day. Just so many cases of that it's very, very clear that disabled people need more assistance with their energy bills, and that needs to come from the government.
And of course, the gentleman we spoke to said that he's not a benefit scrounger. He doesn't want more benefits, but something perhaps like an energy tariff for people who are housebound would be of great assistance to him.
Exactly. At Scope, we're calling for the government to introduce an energy social tariff. So that would be a discounted energy tariff for disabled people that would help those who need it most and help people to be able to afford their energy, so they're not having to make desperate choices and be in situations like Stephen's.
But of course, the government would say, there's only so much money to go around and it's doing its best.
But disabled people are telling Scope that the support government have offered so far is just a drop in the ocean. The cost of living payments, they're just not touching the sides. That's why we need to see an energy social tariff.
If there's somebody watching tonight who's really worried, what can they do?
At Scope, we have a helpline that people can contact. There's lots of other charities out there who can help as well, like Citizens Advice and National Energy Action. And also people should consider getting in touch with their supplier directly if they're struggling as well. Suppliers do have a requirement to help all customers, especially those who are struggling.
Tom Marsden from Scope, thanks very much indeed for joining us on Calendar. Thank you. And just to say that there is lots of advice, in fact, lots of tips and places to contact on our website. Just go to itv.com/calendar.
Next tonight, a murder investigation is underway in Leeds following the death of a man who was found critically injured this morning in the Hare Hills area of the city.
The 27-year-old died shortly after being taken by ambulance to hospital. It's the latest in a string of violent attacks. And tonight, police have been given extra powers to stop and search people in the area that they suspect of carrying weapons. From the scene, here's John Hill.
There's been intense police activity in the Hare Hills area of the city all day, and if you swing right you can see that police presence, those police operations, they continue tonight, and the focus of the activity has been just off that main street, which is Hare Hills Lane. It is the one behind me, which is Compton Road, and police really have been focusing on a stretch of the road around 100 metres behind me. So at the moment very little to see, but there's been intense activity throughout the day. Now, police say that they were called by the ambulance services around 3 o'clock this morning to reports of a critically injured man. The 27-year-old was taken by ambulance to hospital. Sadly, he was pronounced dead at hospital. What police haven't been drawn on is the nature of his injuries, just how he was attacked, how he died. This morning, detectives and forensic specialists placed more than a dozen evidence markers on the road there. And that was in and around a tent which has been used to protect the integrity of the murder scene. This afternoon, senior officers authorised the granting of extra powers to enable officers to carry out more stops, more searches within the area in the hunt for dangerous and offensive weapons connected not only to the murder but also other violent incidents in the recent past, and what they say, intelligence surrounding violence within the area. That will be reviewed tomorrow. But tonight, police have yet to name the man who died, and so far, there have been no arrests.
John Hill reporting from Hare Hills. Thank you. The grieving family of a little boy who died after delays in receiving treatment at a hospital in South Yorkshire say they're tonight one step closer to finding out just what went wrong.
They believe 5-year-old Yusuf Nazir would be alive today had he been admitted to Rotherham Hospital when he became seriously ill last year.
An independent review into his death has now finalised what are described as terms of reference, which means the full investigation can now get underway. Our reporter Tina Gelder has been speaking to Yusuf's uncle.
The parents are used to taking him to the park, taking him to the shop, taking him to the mosque. Now they're going to the graveyard to see Yusuf regularly. Nearly daily they go, all ready to go to school.
The death of Yusuf Nazir has left a void within his entire family, one his uncle tells me that cannot be filled.
The children, they're still FaceTiming him on his iPad, And they're saying, why is Yusuf not answering our FaceTime? He used to answer every time. He doesn't answer our FaceTime. And what are you supposed to say to children?
It was last November that little Yusuf died when a severe infection caused multiple organ failure. Days earlier, he'd been sent home from Rotherham Hospital with antibiotics for tonsillitis. His condition deteriorated, but when Sahir contacted the hospital, he was told there were no beds available. The chief executive of the trust has since apologised to Yusuf's family, but an independent review is now underway. And this week, all parties agreed the key points that will now be investigated in relation to Yusuf's care and treatment. For his family, the importance of this cannot be underestimated.
Well, we want answers on why and who's responsible for Yusuf's death and why they failed and what caused the failing. We want answers from them.
Those answers will not come quickly. But for now, Sahir remembers the precious times he spent with his nephew. Yusuf learning the Quran, celebrating his birthday, dressed as his favourite cartoon character, and the hours they would spend together in the family burger restaurant.
He used to be here, running up and down, playing, sitting and eating here. He said, I can't, but what can I do here? How can I help you? And he said, I can make chips for people. I can help you make chips for everybody. So he was like really excited about that.
Is it memories like that that are keeping you going?
Yeah, it is, yeah. Sometimes I get upset when I'm here because he's not here. And I do think, oh, Yusuf could have been here, but unfortunately he didn't make it.
The abiding hope of Yusuf Nasir's family is that any lessons learned from his death will lead to changes that could help others. Tina Gelder, ITV News, Rotherham.
You're watching Calendar with Lara and Ian, and still to come on the programme, we'll have all the action from the Valentine's night football fixtures, including plenty of love for Sheffield Wednesday, who extended their unbeaten run.
And in the weather, after cloud and rain for some swept through today, it's hard to believe that spring is in the air, but we might have to ruffle a few feathers. I'm sure it's round the corner, though. All the details coming up.
But first, a man who died in a crash in Sheffield last week has been described as a proud father and devoted husband by his family. Martin Bembridge, who was 54, was fatally injured in a three-vehicle collision on Friday. Emergency services were called to the junction of Dykevale Road and Silkstone Road, where he was pronounced dead at the scene. A 19-year-old man has been bailed after he was arrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving, driving over the prescribed limit for drugs and taking a vehicle without consent.
Gang members have been jailed after a drug-making laboratory capable of producing over £5 million worth of amphetamines was discovered in a village near Thirsk. Police were called to reports of suspicious activity in Husthwaite in 2020. Officers found two men making amphetamine oil along with lab equipment and £20,000 in cash. Philip Lister and his brother-in-law Ryan Beer, both from Leeds, were arrested at the scene. The two men, plus two ringleaders, were jailed for a total of 24 years.
Next tonight, 20 years ago today, a York woman took part in one of the biggest public protests in British history. Hazel Gallogly organised for more than 20 coaches to take anti-war protesters from our region to London.
They joined as many as 2 million other demonstrators in the capital. All of them were opposing the impending invasion of Iraq. Kevin Ashford has been hearing from those who were there.
I have never, ever been on anything like this. Look, we're going to take over the streets of London, aren't we?
Hazel Gallagher from York remembers February the 15th, 2003 very well indeed. She and her husband had organised 22 coachloads of protesters to travel from York to London for the anti-war demonstration, a journey that was made into a documentary.
It was just amazing. It was electric. Just people marching and shouting. And everyone had banners and was shouting different slogans, and people were hanging out of windows, of the houses as we go by, cheering, and it was just amazing. I've been on loads of protests and demonstrations, but never anything like that.
Demonstrators flocked here in their hundreds of thousands for the day of action against the prospect of a war in Iraq. 2 decades on, one of the protest organisers took me on the route of the march. Does it seem like 20 years ago?
Well, in a way not, but also you do feel a massive amount has happened in the last 20 years.
Were you surprised by the number of people who turned up?
We were surprised. We knew before the demonstration it was going to be very, very big. We kept getting reports of coaches being sold out, things like that. But we didn't expect it to be, it was estimated at the end between 1.5 and 2 million.
Well, the demonstration that took place on that day 20 years ago wasn't the only one that happened that year, but it was the biggest. In fact, it was one of the biggest displays of public protest ever seen in this country.
It's not just the usual suspects, it's not just the kind of anti-war, largely fringe movements that had protested before. You have people from all walks of life and all age groups and taking part in a huge mass protest, hundreds of thousands of people. And so it really is, it does mean that the political and the military leadership really have to take that into account.
Ultimately, of course, the protests didn't prevent the conflict in Iraq from taking place. But it did demonstrate the existence of a significant anti-war movement, whose voices can still be heard today. Kevin Ashford, ITV News.
Incredible to think it's 20 years ago. Can't believe it. Where does the time go? Now, the ITV Evening News continues at 6:30. Here's a look at what's happening with Mary Nightingale.
Coming up in the programme, Nicola Sturgeon steps down as Scotland's First Minister.
There is a much greater intensity, dare I say it, brutality to life as a politician than in years gone by.
We will be reflecting on Nicola Sturgeon's career and asking what next for the SNP and Scottish independence. We'll have the very latest as police give an update in their investigation into the disappearance of Nicola Bulley. And could Wales's rugby players be going on strike? Do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Thank you, Mary. Time for some sport now, and there's a big game taking place at Bramall Lane in Sheffield this evening.
Zero Accounting Software sponsors ITV Regional Sports Report.
And here he is, the man who spent Valentine's night watching football. I bet your wife was delighted, Chris.
Thrilled, as you can
She's
imagine.
used
She'd have to talk to me for a start. It's always a bonus.
Now, we must say there's a big game tonight, Sheffield United, but any news on the takeover there?
Yeah, good evening, guys. These things always take a while, don't they, to resolve themselves. We heard at the end of last week how Nigerian businessman Dozie Mbosi was confident of completing a takeover for what's believed to be around £90 million. Speaking on Rio Ferdinand's YouTube channel, he said the deal was now in the hands of the Football League. Well, the EFL say they're waiting for a response from Mbosi and the club on a number of queries before they can give the takeover the green light. In the meantime, the Blades are in action tonight against third-place Middlesbrough, whereas Huddersfield travel to Stoke.
So that's this evening, but there was plenty of action last night as well, Chris.
Yeah, Valentine's night, as you've already mentioned. I hope you two didn't forget, did you?
He was on a late shift with Sue.
Yeah,
that was his
I was
date.
here with the girls.
How romantic.
On shift. It was very nice,
Yeah,
yes.
I bet
In fact,
it
Sue
was.
stood me up and went out.
Oh, did she?
Yes,
Yeah,
she
I
did.
can see why.
Yes.
OK, well, Rotherham had a date with Reading, and one man who was feeling the love was Lee Peltier. His first goal for the Millers put them 1-up. Sadly, though, this date ended with a slap in the face after Andy Carroll equalised. Tyrese Forner then scored an injury-time winner for the home side. Now, from the moment Barry Bannon put Sheffield Wednesday ahead with less than a minute on the clock, the Owls were well on their way to an 18th League One game without defeat. 2 more goals from Josh Windass sealed it with a kiss. A beauty from Luca Connell put Barnsley ahead at Port Vale, and despite the home side equalising, the Tykes then showed their credentials as potential promotion suitors with 2 further goals. Result of the night came at Carlisle, where Mansfield scored 4 times in the first half to close the gap on their opponents in the League 2 automatic promotion places to just 3 points. And breathing down their necks are Bradford, who made it consecutive wins with a 2-0 victory over Tranmere. Harrogate's Jack Muldoon celebrated signing a new contract with a goal in a 1-1 draw at Salford, and upwardly mobile Doncaster made it 3 straight wins thanks to James Maxwell's winner against Barrow. And this celebration coming up, well, It teases up quite nicely for our next story, doesn't it?
I see what you did there.
As if by magic.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. Yes,
You're welcome.
We'll come on to that one in a moment. Now, a day out on the golf course is testing for anyone. Tens of thousands of steps for a start. But for one player in Bradford, it's the secret to good health into your 9th decade.
Yes, Pat Holcroft has been a member at Queensbury Golf Club for 71 years, and the club itself is just 10 years older than her. To mark the occasion, Jonathan Brown's been out on the fairways with her and her 7-year-old playing partner.
Teeing off and still hitting hard after 71 years of practice. The rolling hills above Bradford, her sporting home for decades. Queensbury Golf Club, which is marking its centenary in 2023, is just 10 years Pat's senior.
I started here when I was probably about 19. I'd have been out in the fresh air and, you know, meeting friends.
Her collection of clubs well honed and the ground here well trodden, she counts among those playing partners the club's youngest golfer, 7-year-old Charlotte Hurd.
Start as soon as you can. Start young. I think she's absolutely marvellous, this Charlotte. Yeah. I just love it. It's been my hobby. It's been my hobby all my life.
Outside school, Charlotte's out on the fairways 3 times a week. And just 2 years after being introduced to the sport, she's already chipping away at her handicap.
My daddy showed me videos on the telly of Tiger Woods and other people playing golf, and then I was like, I wanted to go, so we chopped one of his old clubs and I got practicing to golf, and then I got really good.
She's also getting good at walking up these hills.
Get to 90 to be famous.
And by giving them some small screen exposure, it's hoped more women of all ages will join them.
We'd love more lady members and more juniors as well. It doesn't really matter what age you start, you can enjoy it. And where would you rather be than outside?
And because it's not very often you're joined by 2 people with 73 years of golfing experience between them, it's a good chance to pick up some tips.
So while I've got you here, ladies, every time I swing my iron through, it seems to veer off to the right. What do I need to do?
Take your club back and swing through straight through. That's it.
Simple as that?
Yes, yes.
What do you want to be when you're older?
A golfer and a dancer.
Both at the same time?
I hope I can carry on a bit longer. I'm still playing and hit a reasonable ball.
Another round complete for Pat and Charlotte.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it and I hope we play again.
They say their sporting season has barely begun. Jonathan Brown, ITV News, Queensbury.
Oh, isn't that lovely?
It's lovely, and proof yet again, isn't it? We have had so many examples of this on calendar over recent nights that, you know, keeping active keeps you looking young.
Well, because movement is medicine, isn't it?
It certainly is, certainly is.
Got caught in the fog last night, so let's see if there's going to be fog again tonight. Here's Emma Jesson.
Good visibility on the horizon. TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Hello there, I hope you've had a good day. We've seen quite a lot of seasons coming and going during the course of one day. This morning it was a bit foggy in places, opened up to some bright spells of sunshine. System moving through, bringing us quite a bit of cloud, and now it's clearing away. Things definitely turning less settled over the next few days. A windy day on Friday, and the Met Office have issued a warning for 50, 60 mile an hour gusts of wind over the highest and to the east of higher ground, and also gusts of 70 miles an hour potentially for Trans-Pennine routes. They're particularly concerned with any north-south oriented major roads, especially because the winds will be perpendicular to those main routes. So you can see that by the time we get to Friday, there's a really tight squeeze on the isobars there, but we are expecting pressure to build from the south over the weekend. Still 1 or 2 frontal systems toppling around the northern flank of that high, which could give 1 or 2 bursts of rain here and there and drizzle, but generally settling down into the start of the new week. So rewinding to the next few hours, we have this clearer, drier slot initially initially this evening before the next system pushes west to east. There could be 5 to 10 millimetres of rainfall on this, maybe an isolated 15 millimetres. Light winds throughout and temperatures hold up because of all the cloud and rain. It's going to be much milder tonight than it has been over the last couple of nights. Here are your sunrise and sunset times for tomorrow. Sun's up 7:24, sets at 5:17, and we are expecting it to be a bit of a wet start initially. This system clears away but leaves a lot of low cloud, mist, murk, some hill fog around, and eventually that just lifts into low cloud, 1 or 2 breaks there with light winds, but the winds increasing overnight into Friday. That's it. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors ITV Yorkshire Weather.
Well, I know Kerry's going to be disappointed not to be here tonight, because before we go, you might remember last month she showed you some footage of a starling murmuration in Ripon. Well, we can tell you that they're still at it. Thousands gather towards dusk here at the Ripon City Wetlands, where our cameraman Richard Sowden captured this amazing hypnotising flock.
The shape-shifting spectacle is normally above a communal roosting site, and apparently they group together to provide protection against predators like falcons. These free air shows can last until March, so catch one if you can.
Looks great, doesn't it? That's all from Calendar for tonight. Laura's back with the late news. Good night.
Bye-bye.